Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you are going to be with us tonight. I have a lot to talk about, and I think many of you will identify with what I am saying. With the whole Epstein files issue in the news on a regular basis, it brings up a lot of feelings for a lot of people, especially for people who have been sexually abused. And I've been really examining my own reactions, but not so much about my reactions to Epstein or to the women, but my own self and how I am. And the topic that I've come up with for tonight is whether through sexual or other kinds of abuse, I may be victimized, but I am not a victim. And it has been irking me that I keep hearing the women who are testifying against Epstein called victims. I'm not even crazy about survivors, but hey, I'm not criticizing anybody who calls themselves a victim or a survivor. You can call yourself anything you want, but I'm telling you what this brought up for me. And I have been meditating on this all day because I have been a victim. I have been a victim on so many levels and in so many ways, you would be shocked. At the same time as I have been an incredible fighter, I have fought the government, I have fought men, I have fought against injustice. I am definitely a fighter. But on the inside, I have been allowing myself to be abused all my life. So, why is that? And what did that have to do with Epstein and the molests and all of that? And something came to me like a thunderbolt. That is so hackneyed, isn't it? It's like a thunderbolt in the night. Um, Today, in fact, maybe an hour ago, as I was meditating on this and saying, what do I want to say? What do I want to say about this that everyone else isn't already saying? And I really looked at why I don't want to identify with being a victim and what to do about it. Because when I say I am a victim of incredible amount of sexual and physical abuse and social abuse and many other things, then I am thinking of myself in that way. I have defined myself as victim. And when I define myself as victim, now I'm not saying anything about you or how you want to see yourself. It always makes me feel weak, that I am weak. So here's the amazing story that I want to share with you that you may, I hope that you will relate to and you will find your own way of relating to it. I have endured an incredible amount of sexual abuse from childhood, first in the home, and I don't want to get into that, but at a very early age. Okay. But then, I went to my junior high school photography session, and the guy tried to sexually molest me. I went to my piano lesson. I was like 13 years old, and my piano teacher snapped my bra and French kissed me at the door every day. And I was going to school in New York. I lived in New York. I was born in 1945. Things were even worse then, if you can believe it, at least for many of us. And I looked at I was on the subway and men were chasing me, men were groping me. This was happening all the time. A guy put his penis on my arm. I was out there in the world, unprotected, as a teenager in the city of New York back in, let's say, 1960. And then it got worse. I actually was raped. I've talked about this before very briefly at knife point twice. And I went to the police, and the police were awful. There were no women police officers at that time. And I'm not even going to go into the details, I just want you to know it was awful. They were worse than the rapist, despite the fact that I had been tied up with electrical cords, blindfolded, gagged. It wasn't enough for the police. And the guy had a big knife at my neck. They said, did I scream? You know, you tell me. And the guy said, if you scream, I will kill you. And it was really believable. And so I'm just telling you one of these incidents. And so I said, no. And they said, better to have died. I mean, that's the way I was treated as a young woman in that era. There was no protection. But what about me? What about the way I felt? How did I deal with some of the situation that I was facing? Why didn't I scream at the guy on the subway when everybody else was hiding behind their newspaper? They didn't want to see that the guy had his penis on my arm. Why didn't I scream at them and say, "Hey, guys, what are you doing here?" It was very easy in the subway in those days. You were squashed in together and they just pushed their penises into you and you were in trouble. But I didn't ever screamed. So, what was I doing that was making me a victim? I've never really looked at that before in that depth, and believe me, it became worse and worse because on many levels I was victimized by men, marriages, husband raping me, all that stuff, being oppressed and repressed by men. And why? And why? And suddenly I had a flashing realization today that I was protecting the male ego. Now, what do I mean by that? And why would I do a fool thing like that? Well, obviously, we as women at that time were being trained to be subservient to men. My own mother said, don't ever let them know how smart you are, Beth. You'll never get a husband. Well, that might have been better, right? But it was in the culture, you see, because men believed they were supposed to be on top. They actually believed this nonsense that their role was to be dominant and our role was to be subservient. So if they weren't dominant, they felt fragile inside and they needed protection from their little egos that were going to beat them up because they weren't dominant. Now, the interesting twist in this story is that I grew up in a family with a very dominant mother. My father didn't have a chance. And I saw him suffering and I felt empathy for him. Bad move. But I didn't protect him, but I protected other men from that bad feeling that they had when they felt dominated by women. So it wasn't just that the society was teaching me, don't ever let a man know how smart you are, Beth. It doesn't mean they weren't smart too, or that I was smart in everything, but I was smart enough to make other people feel uncomfortable in those days. I'd like to have some of those brains come back to me in my old age. But I could see that they were suffering inside by comparison because they were being beaten up by their own egos that told them that they were supposed to be bigger, stronger, make more money, be dominant, all of that stuff. And if they couldn't pull it off, they felt terrible and they beat themselves up. And I'm so empathetic and I feel their pain and I don't want them to feel pain. So I'm trying to protect them from feeling bad about themselves. And when I look back on my relationships and all of the things that happened to me and the way that I reacted, it is obvious. For example, that guy who raped me at knife point in my apartment, blindfolded me, etc. He talked to me for 2 or 3 hours because he really wanted to talk to me. He wanted to unburden himself to somebody who felt that could understand. Why me? Well, he'd seen me on the street. Anyway, the point is, when I got to the police, they asked me if he was black. And I said I had no idea. Now, that was a downright lie. It was very obvious because I could feel his hair. I had enough moonlight coming in, and I knew he was black. But I didn't want them to be prejudiced. They said that if I told them that he was black, they would go onto my block and arrest all the black men with a record and beat the shit out of them. Now, how am I going to do that? How am I going to do that to another human being? I'm not. So I'm protecting the rapist. So I said, no, I don't know. I did give them plenty of information. They could have tracked him down, but they didn't bother. But that was because they were male chauvinist. I hate to say it, male chauvinist pigs, but that was the way they were. They were coming across, the way they treated me. So you see what I'm saying? I over and over and over, I have found that I have protected men, even though I resented them. I resented them for dominating me when I knew that I was at least as smart as they were, if not smarter. And boy, did they ever. Oh, in the day before the women's movement, let me tell you, it was pretty bad. But even beyond that. And so I have always had a tendency to protect the man. Now, isn't that interesting? Despite the fact that the man has not protected me. And that's because they are being so badly beaten up by their egos. Now, it is a shame that we live in a society at this point in history, 2025, where men still believe that shit, that they really believe that that's who they're supposed to be. And if they aren't that, then there is something wrong with them. And I want them to get over that idea, because once they do, they will be fine if we are equals. And when I say equals, I don't mean that we are the same. You're good at this, I'm good at that. We work together. It's called mutual support in my world. In spiritual activism, we believe in oneness, accountability, and mutual support. We support each other. But in this world in which we live, if the man feels, I mean, we've seen this, we've seen the backlash against women's liberation, men being all freaked out because they may be better at staying home and taking care of children, but they're not making as much money as the woman and they feel belittled. And then now you have this manosphere, and the men with their man speak, and they're trying to redeem themselves. And so it's a very sad state of affair. But the point is, in this context, that I became a victim of my protecting men. Now, put that in your pipe and don't smoke it, because it's not good for your health. And when I realized that, I realized how I have played that out. It doesn't only have to be with sexual predators or sexual abusers. It can be your friends, your partners, just men in general. And it applies to women too, to a certain degree, but I'm talking about how it specifically applies to men. And I will make myself weak in order to protect the male ego, even though on the outside I'm so outspoken. See, but I have not protected myself. So now I'm going to bring on my guest tonight, and I'm going to try to keep this show to half an hour, because it seems that once something is over half an hour, nobody will watch it. So I would rather that you watch less, which is my half hour, than not watch my hour or 45 minutes or whatever. So I'm going to bring my guests on, and let's keep in mind that we want to close in half an hour. And let's see. By the way, we are simultaneously broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube, or at least we are supposed to be. And if you have a comment, put it in the chat. And here are my friends tonight: Lizzie Treehart,
Hello.
Todd Benton,
Hi there.
and James Maynard.
Hello, hello.
Okay. All right. Nobody knew what I was going to talk about tonight.
Nope.
So
You never do.
you never do. Even James, even though he's my husband, I didn't even give him a glimpse. So an unfair advantage. So Uh, do people relate to what I'm saying? And do you understand why we don't want to see ourselves as victim? Because then we start becoming that. We start to replicate victimhood and weakness in ourselves. I saw Todd's hand up.
Yeah, it's an interesting paradox. I mean, I was really thinking about this as you were talking about it, like because I got beat by my father, so I can relate in many ways. But I can also relate to not wanting to cause more of what's causing that to happen to you. Like
Mm.
you want to try and do something to make this person heal,
Yes,
to end the madness, right? So I
yes.
can understand your like intuitive or heartfelt desire to not want to like perpetuate it, because if you give them back to you what they're giving to you, you're either going to get killed or you're just going to perpetuate the whole cycle, and then they're going to go rape someone else, and like how does that help anything?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because they feel so bad to start with. If I just keep piling on the bad,
Yes.
then it's just creating the problem. Yeah, by the way, there is an answer to that.
Okay. Let's
The
I mean, do you have
the
it? Do you want to share it
y
now or
Sure, I'll say that, but then I'll come back to you, Todd. The
okay.
answer is to help men, and we're specifically talking about men now, to do things that feel good to them, that are oh, it's funny, this word is coming to my mind, virtuous,
Mhm.
that are good things. I once had, an aphorism come to me from the other side, and it said, "If you want to feel good about yourself, do something you feel good about." So you say to the man, "Honey, I understand you want to feel good about yourself, but this isn't the way. This is just going to make you feel shame," because they know inside them that they're being shitty.
Mhm.
They're also sensitive human beings. And so, just say to them, "What can you do today that will make you feel good about yourself?" So that's how I see the way out of this conundrum, because I really appreciate what you're saying, Todd. That, the answer isn't just to make men feel bad. And that's kind of the way the society is. It's like, oh, you're a predator. It's like, how many men are sexual predators? I mean, how many men aren't?
Right.
You know what I mean? Somehow they've been socialized that way, or whatever it is that's going on for them. Why don't we help them instead of just dumping on them and making them feel more shitty about themselves, and which will make them feel like they have to be more powerful.
Right, just justify it and, keep going with the bad behavior.
Yeah.
It makes me really think about sports too, and the whole culture of where men find their identity is
Mm.
in, but when there's a winner, there's always a loser. So you're always feeling shitty about yourself at some point. Like at the end of the
Mhm.
season, if you're not the team that took it all, then somehow you're messed up. And all the other
Exactly.
things that we reinforce these kinds of underlying psychological motivations and punishments, if you will.
Yes.
If we had like Unleashing the Power of Kids, where you had cooperative games where no one loses, but you have fun together, and that was our public way to come together, that
Yeah.
might be a lot different.
Yes.
But so there's these underlying incentives to perpetuate this that we have in our culture through not just sports but other activities,
Yes.
competition in companies, CEO pay. I mean, it's rampant. It's all over the place now. That
Absolutely.
when you look at it, like you peer out, you go, oh my gosh, no wonder we are how we are.
Absolutely, Todd. I agree with you 100%. Thank you.
Mhm.
James?
I'd like to follow Todd because I too had a father who beat me, and I wound up fearing him, but also emulating him. And so I carried within me an attitude of I'm supposed to be one up on the woman because he felt he should be one up on my mother. But then she turned the tables on him because she was smarter than him. And then I saw that happening, and then I thought, oh my God, I don't want that to happen to me. And so I carried that into my relationships, and with the result that I have felt entitled to be self-centered and number one priority, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really gotten me into trouble. And so I've been cultivating just the very thing you were talking about. I've been trying to keep coming back to do something that makes you feel good, and then you can feel good about yourself. Because I need to do that a lot.
That's good, James, and you're right. I mean, I'm so glad that we're getting into this because now we're getting into the suffering of the men, and it's real. That suffering is real, even though it's psychological. You know what I mean? A lot of it is coming from our own minds, but we are very, very conditioned to think in a certain way that causes an incredible amount of pain. And our society, our capitalistic, competitive society, makes it so much worse. And I've always felt like, oh God, I'd hate to be that kid in Little League who's the last one up at bat and who loses the game.
Hmm.
You know, how many young boys died on that, on that base, on home base, because they lost the game?
Hmm.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And, what does that do to them? And what does that make them feel like they have to do in order to prove themselves?
I'd like to say one more thing about that, if I can. And I know Lizzie wants to speak too, and we want to keep this to a half an hour. So I will
Yeah, but
quickly
we
say,
have time for that. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I did my radio show yesterday, and that's something I love doing, but there were parts of it where I blooped and messed up. Now I don't have a live show, but I do notice, like, even doing something that I love, I'm still critical of myself when I don't,
Mhm.
you know? Like,
Mhm.
so it's really challenging. I don't think it's different for women. I think it's a
No.
human, condition that we have to go after ourselves. It's really self-destructive.
Mhm.
So that's the other thing I'd like to say. And I don't know what the answer is to that, but there's definitely something that I see even when I'm doing things that I enjoy, that I still have that voice creep in, and it tells me, "Yeah, you're no good."
Yeah.
You know. Hmm.
Yeah, well, I know what we need. We need an inner revolution, which I've been talking about forever. We need an inner revolution. We also need a social revolution, a political revolution, an economic revolution, all of it. So, absolutely. And, I'm glad you're bringing it on the other side, but I really felt like I needed to talk about the situation of women today because this is so poignant. And seeing these women standing up there and how afraid they were and how unsupported they felt, it's like, I know how you feel. But when you don't support yourself, it's even worse. Lizzie, I'm sure you have something to share.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm programmed the same way. I think a recent example was just yesterday. I witnessed a client talking to one of our volunteers who's a young gal, and he was an older man. And just the interactions was just like, oh my God. And just the sexuality that was happening and the innuendos. And I was just like, I, I didn't do anything. I'm like, I'm with somebody, I'm, working on somebody with their
Mm,
time, and I'm just like, what? But it's like when you witness it, it's just, oh, it doesn't feel good. And so, I'm just wondering, what could I have done or said,
you could
that,
go to talk to her later and say, what kind of support do you need to deal with this guy? Let's talk about how you can deal with this guy.
well, she appeared to not, be bothered by it at all.
Well, but you don't
She
know
was,
that.
mm,
That's
her
one.
body language was like she was feeding into it.
Well,
So,
maybe she was, but then you could ask her why she did. You could say, I think that he was being very condescending, disrespectful, and sexist towards you. Did you see it? Did you feel that too? And, you know, it bothered me. Did it bother you? You can always go in with a question
mhm,
and ask her because you get to the point. I mean, all my work life when I was working in offices, there was a lot of that. I mean, there was the chasing me around the desk and all of that kind of stuff. Again, you have to realize when I started out, there was no women's movement. There was no discussion of things like this. This didn't even come up, right? But I just learned how to like try to brush it off or fight against it, but you don't know what's going on in her mind or what it's triggering in her. And that is a
mhm.
great thing because you can talk to her. Maybe she could take a look at her conditioning.
Okay. Yeah,
So
if I see her again.
oh, she doesn't work
She's
there?
a volunteer.
Oh, I see.
They come and go, so.
Oh, I see. Well, if you see her, but this will give you an idea of something that you can do.
Mhm,
If you feel like it is, you always check in, okay, is it my job? Should I do this? And then if it is, you can always go in by asking questions if you don't feel comfortable with anything else, and ask them how that they felt and tell them how you felt watching it.
mhm.
So I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Yes,
And
thank you.
I hope that this whole show, so we're doing it in 30 minutes. I hope the show has been helpful. I'm going to ask you to give this program a like or a love on Facebook, and give it a thumbs up on YouTube, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook, and share this program with the many people who are suffering from the same kind of syndrome that I was. And I want to thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to have this realization, because all day long I got the name of the topic, and I thought, what am I going to say about this? And I could feel this negative energy just rushing through my body. And I kept praying. I said, God, or whatever it is up there, give me a hand here. What can I say? How am I going? But wasn't even about the show. It was like, how am I going to get out of this? I want to be as strong as I can be, and not make myself weak in order to make some other human being feel safer in themselves, feel
Mm,
strong. You know, uh, that inner voice said to me once, "It is you are creating as much bad karma by letting someone abuse you as you do when you abuse someone else,
mm,
because
mm,
karma is collective, and letting yourself be abused is just as bad as being abusive." So I'd like you guys to think about that.
mm.
And we have another show on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific time, which is Magical Improvs with the Kindred Spirits Band. And that's going to be James and me. And I'm going to have my piano all fixed up and tuned tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to doing that tomorrow night. And come back here at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time if you can come for the live show. And even if you can't, please leave your comment, and let us know that you're there, and let us know if this was helpful to you in any way. I want to thank my guests for being so great about ending quickly, and I hope you felt like you had enough time to say what was really important to you. Good. Okay, so I love you, and now I'm going to play the music
My-
to go out and try to do this right. Why doesn't this ever work?